Hello, peace, 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 and power. And elevation be to all of you. This your girl Tiffany coming through here live in effect. Today's topic, I'm going to be dealing with Black history, and I'm going to be talking about John Gibbs St Clair Drake. So, give a little bit about who is St Clair Drake. St Clair Drake was a sociologist, an anthropologist, and of course, he was an activist and a Pan-Africanist. Yeah, he subscribed under the Pan-African ideology. Okay, so this brother has written several books and several essays pertaining to the life of African Americans and the socioeconomic status, and as far as the economic status and dealing with the social life, the racism, the culture, etc. So that's what his primary study was focusing on. So I want to give a special thanks to everybody that subscribed to the channel, hit the notification bell. Thank you guys that's been watching my channel. Thank you to the new subscribers that's coming on here. Peace to Brother Centavo. Thank you for coming through. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Make sure you guys hit the notification bell and share the videos and all the great stuff, and check out the other contents I have on here. Peace to Brother Umi. So I want to go ahead and get started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the source of Wikipedia, and then I got several other books. Well, a couple of books by him, and also I have a couple of articles that he written. So let's go to Wikipedia. Or WikiOne, which is basically Wikipedia. All right, so who is St. Clair Drake? So St. Clair Drake was an African-American sociologist and anthropologist whose scholarship and activism led him to document much of the social turmoil of the 1960s. Established some of the first Black studies program in American universities, and contributed to the independence movement in Ghana. Drake often wrote about challenges and achievements in race relations as a result of his extensive research. While studying at the University of Chicago in 1945, Drake co-authored with Horace R. Clayton Jr. the work Black Metropolis, a study of Negro life in a northern city, a landmark study of race and urban life. Drake was one of the first African Americans faculty members at Roosevelt University in Chicago at a time when academic opportunities for Black scholars were usually limited to historically Black colleges and universities. He continued his research while a professor at Roosevelt for 23 years before leaving to found the African and African American Studies program at Stanford University. All right. So a major element in Drake's career was a major element in Drake's career was an interest in Africa and the Pan-African movement, which sprang from his dissertation work with immigrants from Africa living in the United Kingdom, and was expanded upon during his later research projects conducted in West Africa. Ultimately, he spent years working in the newly independent country of Ghana as an academic and an informal advisor to the national government there, before his return to the United States and his academic career in that country. All right. So let's look at his education and life. So he was born in Suffolk, Virginia on January the 2nd, 1911. Later in life, included professionally, he went by his last name only, St. Clair Drake. His father immigrated to the United States from Barbados in the British West Indies, becoming a Baptist minister and international organizer for Marcus Garvey Universal Negro Improvement Association. His father's devout religious faith did not allow for activity like dancing, going to the movies, or using playing cards, all of which were forbidden to Drake in his childhood. Drake's mother, Bessie Lee, was a native of Staunton, Virginia. When Drake was 2 years old, the family moved to Harrisburg, Virginia, when his father decided it would be best for the family to join the many African Americans who were then moving northward. During his childhood, St. Clair lived in a multi-ethnic neighborhood. He recalled that his understanding of race and prejudice was vague, but at least one of his fights occurred when he was insulted about the color of his skin. Right. And then it goes on to say Drake attended elementary school in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where he remained through the seventh grade. He then returned to Virginia to attend high school. He inevitably learned the facts of Southern life. And in his first contact with the Negro press, he remarked, it was rather exciting, this learning that one is a Negro and what it means, also rather frustrating. At this time, with the encouragement of his teacher, he began to write poetry, generally about nature. That same year, he also edited the school yearbook. He completed high school in 3 years. So in 1927, Drake left Staunton, Virginia to attend Hampton Institute, which is now Hampton University. Hampton's appeal, according to Drake, was its offer to allow students to work their way through college. Drake met the cost of his education by working as a waiter and then as a front desk clerk at the Holly Tree Guest House. Both of these forms of employment were segregated jobs intended only for Black workers. Drake was almost immediately dissatisfied with the faculty's civilizing mission attitude, which he attributed to the intellectual legacy of Booker T. Washington, and he complained that the institute faculty did not include any African American amongst its full professors. Drake and other Hampton students engaged in a strike beginning on October the 9th, 1927, only a few weeks after Drake arrived on campus. While the list of students' demand exceeded 60 specific points, many of them dealt with the need for more Black teachers, higher academic standards, and dismissal of racist and unqualified faculty, and into various strict disciplinary policies and amnesty for those involved in the strike. Due to the intervention of administrators and parents, the strike ended in defeat. But as scholar Andrew Rosa concluded, the administration lost the war. Many reforms eventually became implemented, and Drake flourished at the college over the next 3 years. In the course of his studies at Hampton, Drake served as the president of the student body, led the college chapter of the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, became the editor of Hampton Script, and even played on the college soccer team. He graduated from Hampton in 1931 with a BS degree in biology and a minor in English. All right. A career as an academic. From 1932 to 1933, Drake was on the faculty of the Christiansburg Institute in African American Trade High School in Christiansburg, Virginia. At the Christiansburg Institute, he taught a variety of subjects, coached soccer, led chapel prayer, and began to write professionally. During this time, Drake continued pursuing his interests in academics and social justice pursuits at Pendle Hill, a Quaker retreat and graduate center. So Drake worked as an instructor at Dillon University in New Orleans from 1935 to 1937. In 1935, Drake also joined a research team led by Allison Davis, a former colleague from Howard University. The anthropological research explored the caste system of the American South, and they later published their observation in the book Deep South, a social anthropological study of caste and class. Drake was moved by the potential that social science could have in racial causes, and ultimately followed Davis to study anthropology as a doctoral student at the University of Chicago. During the late 1930s in Chicago, Drake worked as the assistant director for the Illinois State Commission on the Condition of the Urban Colored Population and conducted research in churches serving Chicago's Black community. He returned briefly to Dillard in 1940 to work as an assistant professor, but was dismissed in the following year for supporting a student strike and subsequently returned to his studies at Chicago. So far, okay. It's very hard to be. I'm sorry if you guys can't see my screen, but it is very hard to be an activist and a professor at the same time. So you would have to either choose one or the other. And for Mr. St. Clair, his thing was, yes, he's not only a professor teaching courses by African and African American studies and dealing with anthropological studies, but he was also an activist. But that was bringing conflict within the schools that he was working for. So that pretty much put his job on the line. So it's like this: if you're a professor, you're gonna be a professor, but you are not allowed to participate in activism or especially going on strike or whatnot, because now you're putting yourself up at risk. And that's what he was willing to do. So let me go ahead and continue. All right. So after World War II, he was the co-author with Horace R. Caton Jr. of Black Metropolis, a study of the lives of African Americans living in Bronzeville, a neighborhood on Chicago's South Side. The book was characterized in Drake's obituary in the New York Times as a landmark of objective research and one of the best urban studies produced by American scholarship. Drake became one of the more prolific chroniclers in books and in scholarly articles of the turmoil and development of race relation in the 1960s. In 1946, Drake became an assistant professor of sociology at Roosevelt University, along with chemist Edward Marion Augustus Chandler, Martin Dance, Sybil Sherrier, and sociologist Rose Hum Lee. All right. He remained a member of the Roosevelt Sociology Department until 1968. He commented years later that the offer to join Roosevelt came as a surprise. He fully expected only to be considered by Negroes colleges of the time. He found a home at Roosevelt, which he embraced as an experimental institution, where he was able to develop his calling as an activist anthropologist. And he was perhaps the most distinguished faculty member ever to have taught at Roosevelt University, and was also one of the first Black faculty members at Roosevelt. While there, he created one of the first African-American programs in the United States. Among his many honors, he received an honorary degree from Roosevelt. Drake taught at Roosevelt for 23 years, okay? And says he remained at Stanford until his retirement in 1976. And then it goes down to 2 years in the United Kingdom, where he spent 2 years in the United Kingdom from 1974 to 1948. Of course, he had conducted his dissertation in 1947 at Cardiff, Wales, where he studied a community of African seamen and their Welsh families and value systems, social structure, and race relation in the British Isles. Drake examines the forms of social action that arose in response to British racial and colonial domination. At this time, he was one of the first scholars studying race relation in the British Isles and was considered one of the foremost scholars on the subject. Kenneth Little published his PhD thesis, Negroes in Britain, which was a study of Black and minority ethnic communities of Cardiff. Drake worked with the Black community of Cardiff, drafting a response in which the local community said they distrust people who survey us and study us, who write about us and publicize us, and who try to reform and lead us. All right. So even after his retirement from the faculty at Stanford, Drake remained active as a scholar and author. Another of Drake's works, which demonstrated his continual interest in race relations throughout his career, was Black Folk Here and There, an essay in history and anthropology, which he had about 2 volumes. One came out in 1987 and the other one came out in 1990. That was the last one, as part of the entitled Afro-American Culture and Society. Okay. So the contribution to the Pan-African movement. So here's his contribution. Drake's connection to the African continent began early in his academic career. He met Kwame Nkrumah, George Padmore, and Mbuyu Kwenye when he was completing his fieldwork in Cardiff, Wales, as a part of his dissertation in Chicago. As a result of this early contact with Pan-African advocates, Drake pursued research projects in Liberia and Ghana in the 1950s, funded in part by a grant he received from the Ford Foundation. From 1958 to 1961, Drake served as head of the Department of Sociology at the University of Ghana. Drake's connection allowed him to participate in increasingly important discussion connected to the newly independent nation of Ghana. At the request of George Padmore and Nkrumah's advisor, Drake presented and participated in the planning meeting for the All African Peoples Conference held at Accra in December 1958. Padmore's relationship with Drake allowed Drake to acquire unrivaled knowledge of Ghana's political leaders. Drake served as an informal advisor to leaders of several newly independent African nations in the early 1960s, particularly Nkrumah, who by this time had become Ghana's prime minister, but later chose to leave Africa and this political work after coups installed military leaders in many of these nations. Drake later remarked that he would not work under generals. Drake's personal commitment to see Ghana succeed and his concerns about the privacy of the people and conversation he observed led him to elect not to publish books or articles based directly on his work in Africa or with African immigrants in Britain. However, he did conduct several research studies during his time in Africa with his wife and fellow anthropologist Elizabeth Dewey Johns, though these were not directly associated with his political or personal connection in the countries he visited. Drake was also able to further social interest in African countries through his work with the Peace Co-ops. He provided cultural sensitivity training for a group of 50 American students planning to work in Ghana. And then let's go into his personal life. So St. Clair Drake was married to a colleague, Elizabeth Dewey Johns. Johns was a graduate student in sociology at the University of Chicago when Drake began work there as a graduate student in anthropology. As a fellow student, she helped introduce Drake to the theories connected with cultural and behavioral relativism. After their marriage, the two of them worked together conducting research in West Africa. The couple raised 2 children, Sandra and Carl. During World War II, Drake was a conscientious objector in response to the U.S. military segregation policy, and he served in a civilian capacity in the U.S. Maritime Service. So these are the awards that he had received. The Roosevelt University dedicated a research center to his memory. Stanford University dedicated the St. Clair Drake's lecture to his memory. And recipient of the Ashenfield Wolf Book Award in 1946, recipient of the Du Bois, Johnson, and Fraser Award of 1973, recipient of the Bronislaw Malawski Award in 1990. That sounds like a Russian name to me. All right, but anyways, selected work. These are his theses. These are the books that he has written. Churches and Voluntary Association Among Negroes in Chicago, Black Metropolitans, Social Working in West Africa with Dr. Piri Omari, Race Relation in a Time of Rapid Social Change, Black Religion and the Redemption of Africa, Black Folks Here and There, the Essay in History and Anthropology. And of course, he written pamphlets. He had written in chapters in books, journal articles. There's so many of them. So if you guys want to look up any more information, you can see down here where it says references. All right, so references shows where the sources came from. And then the external links, you can see right here where it says FBI files on well, let's see what the FBI files is about. So as I pulled up the information, there was FBI files on St. Clair Drake. Let's see what the FBI files had to say. Okay. John Gibbs St Clair Drake, aka St Clair Drake. It says all information contained herein is unclassified except where shown otherwise. It says Peace Co-ops applicant. All right. Let's see if I can find something on the next page. All right, so they got his pamphlet here. It says to Negroes veteran who belong to churches and to the Negro ministers of the United States of their congregation. So it says, greetings. This is the voice of those who were torn from their homes, their work, their schools, and their churches to fight for the four freedoms in Africa, India, China, Europe, and many islands of the seas. This is the voice of those who got back, some didn't. Then it goes down here. We did so in the determination to secure for ourselves and our people the four freedoms here at home, for which we were fighting on many distant shores. Because we feel our aims are just and our cause a righteous one, we appeal for your support and that of your church in our struggle for democracy. Our aim is your aim, to preach the good news for the poor, to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, to restore sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised. So this had to come out in, what year was this? It doesn't say what year, so, but this is the pamphlet that they was using on. Let me see if I can find a year. So I guess this came out around the 50s and 60s. And y'all know what it was around the 60s. That's when they came with that COINTELPRO stuff. That was during the time where Edgar J. Hoover was an FBI was working as one of the top FBI agents during that time period. Or no, he was a CIA agent, excuse me. So he was doing all this investigation stuff on black movements and whatnot. All right. So it says the Negro church militant. Our forefathers were slaves torn from their homeland to satisfy the greed and lust of men. Throughout the dark night of bondage, they sang, "Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land, and tell old Pharaoh, let my people go." All right, so they try to use his pamphlet as a way to say that he was bringing about some type of vigilance and militant style to the African American community. All right, let's see what they say over here. Okay, it says Chicago T18 advised on April 18, 1946 that the time that the American Youth for Democracy was trying at that time to get one St. Clair Drake to speak at a meeting on Friday. The informant had no information as to whether or not the AYD contacted Drake or whether he did speak at their meeting. The AYD has been designated by the Attorney General of the United States pursuant to execute orders. The Illinois edition of the Worker for May 18th of 1958 carried an article captioned Chicagoan under Dr. Du Bois, May 21st, reflected that Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois would speak May 21st at Dunbar School Auditorium, where he would be held as the man of the country by more than 1,000 Chicagoans. St. Clair Drake, author and lecturer, was listed as one of the sponsors. Wow. And then it goes on to say Chicago T19 advised that he was not personally acquainted with St. Clair Drake and had no further information regarding him. Chicago T19 is now available for recontact. On February 2nd, 1948, Chicago T20 advised that as January 1948, one St. Clair Drake was a member of the board of directors of the, let me see. Oh, my bad. I forgot. Let me show you guys the actual screen. I've been on this other screen for a while. All right, let me show you guys. I hope you guys can see that. Okay, so this is the FBI files on St. Clair Drake. This is where I was reading at, my bad. But it says that Chicago, what I was saying, Chicago T20 was recontacted on January 17, 1962, advised he had known St. Clair Drake for more than 10 years. He said Drake is considered an authority on Africa and claims to be a personal friend of Nkrumah of Ghana and several other African leaders. Wow. So I think they was trying to get him for conspiracy. So they would basically see the FBI director was trying to get him for conspiracy because at that time period, this is where you had Black people that was involved in the communist parties, and they were starting to become militant and trying to work with other countries. So by St. Clair Drake working with the leader over there in Ghana, which is Kwame Nkrumah, that raised a lot of red flags for them. So they were trying to catch him on some type of conspiracy type of stuff. But yeah, that's interesting, but it's not very surprising to me that there is some FBI cases going on. I mean, because there's plenty of our people that been investigated on the FBI, even if they was trying to do diligent work for the community. All right, but anyhow, let me go ahead and show you guys some books because I don't want to be on here too long. All right, so I have an article here. This article comes from Indiana University Press. It's called The American Negro's Relation to Africa, St. Clair Drake, which came out in 1967. From the source, Africa Today, Volume 14, Number 6, Black Power in Africa. All right, so you guys can look under jastor.org, JSTOR.org, if you want to find out more information about this. I'm not going to really go into this, but, well, you know what, as a matter of fact, I'll go into a little bit of it, and that's it. All right, so the American Negro's relation to Africa. Africa, mother of us all. The anthropologists tell us that it was out of Africa, East Africa, now Southeast Asia, as we once believed that men first came to people this earth, that the continent of Africa is mother of us all, black, brown, yellow, red, and white. And it says, but Africa is Mother Africa to 18 million Americans in a very special sense. Mother, whether they recognize her as such or not, for by law and custom in this country, anyone known to have any African ancestor is considered a person of African descent. Identification with Africa is forced upon those called Negro, whether they like it or not. In the words of the old spiritual, there's no hiding place down here. Okay. So it talks about the relationship of the African Americans and Africa. So basically, as far as descendancy is concerned, it shows that African American has a correlation with the Africans as far as their descendancy. So even during that time period, they knew that, because if you notice about a lot of the custom practice during the 60s and 70s, that was inspired by African tradition. So it's the African tradition that was mixed in the American culture. So, and I say this all the time, without the African influence, there will be no Black culture. What is Black culture without African influence? What is Black culture without African influence? Nothing. It's nothing. All right, so that's that one. I got some books I want to show y'all. You guys can check out on your own personal time if y'all want to read into it. This book right here. It's called Black Metropolitans, a study of Negro life in a northern city, which they was basically talking about Chicago in that time period. So you guys can check out this book. It was written by Horace Caton and St. Clair Drake. All right. And this book came out in around the 60s. So let's see, it was copyrighted in 1945, and then it was copyrighted again in 1962. Okay. Okay, so it says dedicated to the late Professor Robert E. Park of Tuskegee, the University of Chicago, and Fisk, American scholar and friend of the Negro people, who once said, anthropology, the science of man, has been mainly concerned has mainly concerned up to the present with the study of primitive peoples. But civilized man is quite as interesting an object of the investigation, and at the same time, his life is more open to observation and study. Urban life and culture are more very subtle and complicated, but the fundamental motives are in both instances the same. Well, that was a great dedication right there. That's a great statement. So you guys go ahead, if y'all want to look into it, just type in Black Metropolis. You can probably look it up on Amazon. You can look it up on Barnes and Nobles. You can download the EP PDF, which is the ebook, additional book copy. You can do all of that. All right. So I'm gonna leave that right there. All right. So then he has another book called name the book called Black Folk Here and There, Essay in History and Anthropology, St. Clair Drake, Volume 1. This book was written in 1987. Okay. It was written in 1987. So you guys can check that one out too. Just type in Black Folk Here and There by St. Clair Drake. All right. All right. The other one is some articles. The last two are articles. This article here is called The Reflection on Anthropology and the Black Experience. The Reflection on Anthropology and the Black Experience. So I'm going to zoom it up for you guys if y'all want to take a peek at it. This is by St. Clair Drake. And this was written in this part was written in the 70s. Yeah, it was written in the 70s. It was written part around like 1975, 1976. So it's called Reflection on Anthropology and the Black Experience. So basically he's looking back on the time that he got into like studying sociology, anthropology, and how he met Dr. Caton, and how they linked up together, wrote their first books together, and all the studies and research that he has done dealing with the anthropological study of African Americans, the sociology, and etc. So you guys can check out that book if you want to. All right, and then we have another one called The Black Diaspora and Pan-Africanism. The Black Diaspora in the Pan-African Perspective. Again, written by St. Clair Drake. It came out in 1975. The Black Scholar, Source, Volume 7, Number 1, Black Diaspora, published by the Paradigm Publisher, and it can be found on jastor.org, JSTOR.org. So you guys can look that up if you are very interested in finding out some information. Great resources. Okay. So I might read a little information over here. It says the diaspora paradigm involves the concept of a homeland, a various situation outside of it into which individuals have migrated and where persisting diaspora communities survive despite profound changes in the culture and physique of the people. In the classical prototype, the Jewish people were forced away from the homeland, though the spur, a remnant, never lost its nostalgia for the homeland and kept alive the concept of the ingathering of the exiles of an eventual return. Some similarities to the Black experiences are obvious, including a time trends that can be called Black Zionist, but the diaspora analogy, like the internal colony analogy, needs constant critical analysis if it is to be a useful guide to research as well as striking metaphor. For the purpose of this essay, sub-Saharan Africa is viewed as a homeland from which, during the past 10,000 years, a number of separate diasporas may be defined. Our primary concern at this point is the most recent and to us the most immediately relevant diaspora, the movement of over 10 million Africans to the Western Hemisphere between 1500 AD and 1890 AD. Europeans brought them and used most of them as chattel slaves in a variety of work settings in cities, in mines, on yeoman farms, in maritime activities, and on plantation growing commodities for the world market. Everywhere they were forced into subordinated roles into the process of production and in non-economic relationships by institutionalized racism, first for over 300 years as slaves and as discriminated against free Negroes, then later as free labor controlled by caste system as in South prior to legal desegregation, or by color class systems which condemned them to the lowest stratum of the society by denial of equality of opportunity and through the deliberate cultivation of a false consciousness that prevents effective struggles. By the mid-1970s, 115 years out of slavery, the Black community in the United States represent the largest, most compact, and best organized group in the hemisphere that consider itself Black. Composed of some 24 million individuals, yet its leadership potential in Pan-African affairs is complicated by the fact that it is an enclave within the territory of a large white superpower. Barbados, with its 166 square miles, is a sovereign state and a UN member. So I'm just going to stop right there. Again, that's him writing about the Black diaspora and from a Pan-African perspective. All right. All right, so that's all that I have for today. And his work is still pretty much relevant to this day. The concept has not really changed that much. It's just that we're in a different time period, so a lot of the things have not really changed that much. A lot of the information is still pretty much relevant. So his argument, I pretty much agree for the most part. I agree a lot of the things that he has written from an anthropological standpoint and sociological standpoint. So he was able to back up the source about the concept of Pan-Africanism and the diaspora and the connection with Black people, and not just only here in the United States, but elsewhere too. So yeah, he has shown that through his research. So it takes people, especially someone that's in those social science field, to actually do the groundwork and be able to write some type of dissertation based on their experiment, based on what they have encountered, based on the factual information that was presented to them. So someone like him and E. Frazier and W.E.B. Du Bois and many others have brought a lot of inspiration to the social science field when it came down to the anthropology field of study as well. And same way for Zora Neale Hurston. A lot of people don't know that Zora Neale Hurston was an anthropologist as well. She did a lot of groundwork. She wasn't just a part of the Harlem Renaissance. She also did groundwork as well, studying African culture, Caribbean, and the American South and all of that. So yeah, that's all I have for today. So I'll be back later, and I hope I check you guys out, and we'll go from there. So make sure you guys just subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, share my channel, and until next time, peace and power and elevation be to all of you. Thank you guys for coming in to the chat. Thank you guys for sharing my videos and all of that great stuff, and I will connect with y'all later. All right.